The US thought it had China cornered. A fresh round of tariffs was supposed to squeeze Beijing, force its hand, and bring it to the negotiation table. But China didn't flinch. Instead of backing down, it played a long game, one that had been in motion for years. Sure, they hit back with their own tariffs, but that was just the opening move. The real counterattack was happening behind the scenes. China tightened its grip on critical supply chains, securing rare materials that the US and its allies rely on. It struck new trade deals with countries looking to move away from American influence. Every move wasn't just about responding, it was about reshaping the global economy itself. Fast forward to February 2025, and tensions reached a boiling point. The US slapped tariffs on over $60 billion worth of Chinese imports, targeting everything from computer parts to electric vehicle components, essential building blocks of modern technology. It was part of a bigger plan, a continuation of Trump's push to bring manufacturing back to the US. The message was clear. Washington wanted China to play by new trade rules. But what happened next proved this fight wasn't just about tariffs. It was about control, power, and the future of who runs the global economy. The US said it was all about saving American jobs. But to China, it felt like something bigger, an attempt to challenge its power on the world stage. Beijing didn't panic. It didn't rush. Instead, it made its move carefully, striking right where it would hurt the most. Within days, China announced tariffs on $35 billion worth of American goods. But this wasn't just about numbers, it was about strategy. They went after farming, energy, and automobiles. But the real genius was that they picked products that mattered most in key US political regions. Soybeans from the Midwest, the heart of American agriculture, oil from Texas, a major piece of the energy industry. China wasn't just hitting the economy, it was turning American businesses against their own government's policies, and that was just the beginning. While Washington focused on trade restrictions, Beijing was busy setting up backup plans. It strengthened deals with Brazil, Russia, and even Mexico, ensuring it could get the goods it needed without relying on the US. But the real power move wasn't in soybeans or oil. It was in something far more valuable: rare earth minerals. These hidden treasures are the building blocks of modern technology. Phones, electric cars, military systems. None of them function without rare earths. And China controls over 80% of the world's supply. So when the US ramped up tariffs, China didn't just complain. It hinted at something far more disruptive, cutting off exports of these critical materials. No loud threats, no dramatic speeches, just a simple message. If you want to build the future, you still need us. But China wasn't done yet. It wasn't just American farms in the crosshairs. The energy sector was next. New taxes were slapped on US oil and liquefied natural gas, LNG, putting more pressure on one of America's most powerful industries. For years, China had been one of the biggest customers for American energy. But when tensions escalated, that changed fast. Almost overnight, US energy companies felt the hit. Contracts were cancelled, shipments got stuck, and profits took a dive. Meanwhile, China wasn't just sitting around. It moved quickly, securing massive energy deals with Russia, striking new partnerships in the Middle East, and ramping up its own production. The goal: to cut its reliance on American fuel, not just for now, but for the long haul. Even if relations improve, those new deals won't just disappear. And that means the US isn't just losing money, it's losing a major foothold in one of the world's biggest energy markets. But this battle isn't just about oil or gas. The real showdown is in technology. The US took a hard stance, blocking China's access to high-end computer chips and shutting out companies like Huawei from American partnerships. The idea was simple: slow down China's tech industry. But Beijing had a different plan. Instead of depending on American tech, it doubled down on its own. Billions of dollars were poured into developing homegrown semiconductors, improving artificial intelligence, and expanding 5G networks. The result? China's tech sector isn't just catching up, It's starting to compete on the global stage. In some areas, it's even pulling ahead. And while most of the world was watching tariffs and trade bans, China played another quiet but powerful card: US debt. For years, China has been one of the biggest holders of American government bonds, with over $800 billion invested. Selling it all at once would hurt China too, but making small moves is a different story. After the tariffs, China started buying less US debt, causing a chain reaction. Borrowing. Money became more expensive for the American government, which trickled down to everyday people, raising costs for home loans, car payments, and credit cards. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's a slow, steady squeeze with very real consequences. The US has long depended on China to help fund its massive debt. But when China starts pulling back, even just a little, it creates a ripple effect that no trade war can fix. While Washington was busy slapping on tariffs, Beijing was focused on something bigger: building relationships. Instead of getting stuck in a fight with the US, China was shaking hands and signing trade agreements with Europe, Southeast Asia, and even longtime American partners like Latin America and Russia. The goal: make sure China has plenty of options so it's never backed into a corner by US policies. This wasn't just about dodging tariffs, it was about shifting the balance of power in global trade. For American businesses, the consequences go beyond losing access to Chinese buyers. Now they're competing in markets where they once had an edge, but China is moving in fast, and it's not slowing down. And while the US and China were busy grabbing headlines, something else was happening closer to home. Canada and Mexico, two of America's closest trade partners, were hit with US tariffs, and just like China, they hit back. Canada raised taxes on American farm products, and Mexico targeted steel, pork, and whiskey. But here's where it gets really interesting. Both countries didn't just retaliate, they pivoted. Instead of relying so heavily on the US, Canada and Mexico started expanding their trade with China. That's a problem. If these countries begin shifting more of their business away from the US, America's influence in its own backyard starts to fade. But the biggest shakeup isn't just about who trades with whom, it's about how products move across the world. For decades, China was the go-to place for manufacturing. But as trade tensions escalated, companies started looking for alternatives. China saw it coming and was ready. Instead of panicking, Beijing doubled down, investing in new supply chains across Vietnam, Indonesia, and parts of Africa. The strategy was clear: keep global production under China's influence, but make sure it's not tied to US trade rules. For American companies, this means two things: higher costs to shift production and a much longer, more expensive process to adapt. And this isn't just a temporary hiccup, it's a major transformation in how the world's economy operates. For American farmers, the trade war wasn't just a headline, it was a financial nightmare. China had been one of their biggest customers, buying up tons of soybeans, corn, and pork. But when tensions escalated, those orders dried up almost overnight. Instead of relying on American farms, China turned to other suppliers: Brazil, Argentina, and even its own domestic production. That left US farmers with excess crops, falling prices, and mounting debt. The government stepped in with bailout money, but that was just a short-term bandage on a much bigger problem. Because once China locks in new suppliers, it may never come back to American farms, even if trade relations improve. This wasn't just about business, it became political. Farming communities, once strong supporters of US leadership, started feeling the pressure, and with every lost sale, the calls for a new strategy grew louder. But farmers weren't the only ones feeling the squeeze. When countries start slapping tariffs on each other, the costs don't stay within boardrooms. They show up in everyday life. From groceries to gadgets, price tags started creeping higher. Businesses that relied on imported materials had to pay more, and they passed that cost straight to consumers. Suddenly, a smartphone that once felt affordable was stretching budgets, and a trip to the grocery store meant spending extra on basic staples. The cost of living edged up, and most people didn't even realize it was tied to trade policies happening oceans away. Meanwhile, global markets hate unpredictability, and this trade war brought plenty of it. Every new tariff announcement, every failed negotiation sent shockwaves through stock markets. One day, prices soar, the next, they plunged. Big companies with global ties, tech giants, automakers, retailers, saw their stock value swing wildly.